Hi folks, my name is Matthew Harrison. I'm a farming systems scientist at the Tasmanian Institute of Agriculture. In this webinar we'll talk about the Optimiser app of WaterCan Profit. In previous webinars I've talked about the water price app and the investment app, and the links to those webinars are below. Just some housekeeping. If you hit this button here, this will take you back to the home screen. Here's a previous YouTube video that we've done. Before you use WaterCan Profit, you'll have to log in and register. So you do that by, well, I can hit log out here, but you'll have log in. You need to register. You simply put your username in and your password, and then it will send you an email to log in. And then you'll be instantly in, and it stays logged in. I'm not going to do it here because it might take a bit too much time. So I'm already logged in. So we hit Optimiser. Now, the purpose of the Optimiser is to say, well, if I had 10 megalitres of water, or 100, in any given season, with a variable water price, a variable yields, a variable seasonal climate outlook, soil differences, climatic differences, and so on, what's the most profitable combination of crops for my farm given my rotation? So if you, for example, had 3 different crops, if you had barley, irrigated canola, and perhaps maize, and you're wondering, well, irrigated maize is worth a lot more this year. Should I save all of my water for the summer, given I have a fixed allocation, or should I also partially water my winter crops, irrigated barley and irrigated canola, or should I distribute evenly across the 3? This is what this Optimiser app will tell you. So I'll go into the details here, but in all of these apps you work through, you start at the top and then you work down each tab on the left hand side. So we start off at the farm, and then we go through the irrigators, paddock, crops, and then you finally get to the Optimiser. This is actually a water price optimizer, but this is the final one, and you hit either optimal areas or optimal water. So you start with farm. Now these are default examples here. You can either copy one by hitting that button there, or you can create a new one by adding a new farm. You hit new farm here and it will pop up here. Delete that there. You can reset to defaults by hitting this hammer icon here, and to rename you simply select up here. So this would be a new farm, like that. So then what we have is we have this map out here. So what this map does is it ingests long-term weather data for anywhere in Australia, basically. So you can click, so for example, you might have a site in the centre of Australia, and you wouldn't because that's an arid desert. But maybe we have a site in, let's say, near Horsham in Australia. So let's click on Horsham. What it's done is it's ingested the long-term rainfall. So summer, in a dry season, summer rainfall is 75 mil. In a dry season, the winter is about 165 mil. In a typical year, you get about 250 millimetres in winter. And you've got the wet season stats there. If you click somewhere else, you see those numbers change. That's using over 100 years of weather data to pull that in. So you can zoom in and out by scrolling the mouse in and out, and you can determine where you want to go. Let's have a look at Melbourne. Long-term rainfall for Melbourne is 250 millimetres in summer, 325 in winter. If you're not happy with those numbers, you can see them down here and you can simply change them. You might say, well, my summer rain is actually more than my winter rain, or it's the same. So you might say 300 and 300. So in all the parts of this Optimiser app, you put in a dry season, a moderate season, and a wet season. But that's a really nifty tool. So you can basically ingest long-term weather. Then we go to so the farm name that you're on. So this is a little bit ambiguous here at the start, so you've got to be careful. So we're on new farm, and we've selected Horsham as the site. Okay, so we've got the new farm. The farm that we've selected is shown up the top. Right, now we've done all that. We've done the rainfall. Now we're moving down into irrigators. Now irrigators, you can add as many as you like, or you can have just one. To add a new irrigator, you hit that button. So you might have a channel, and down here you've got the cost and the allocation. If you hover the mouse over, you can see it gives you more detail. We might have an overhead lateral sprinkler. So that's basically an overhead sprinkler, and you might have. Okay, so it doesn't know what the cost so this is the cost involved with using this water in a moderate season. So your allocation, some people mightn't have an allocation. In a moderate allocation you might have 100. Some people might not have an allocation at all in the dry season, and they might have twice as much in a wet season because it's wet, or it might all be the same. So you can change all of those numbers. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to say they're all the same. I'm going to say the cost of water in a dry season of supplying is much higher. That's often what we see. It's 300 in a moderate season, and it's 200 in a wet season. Okay, I'm just making up those numbers. You could enter the same numbers there. So I've entered my two different irrigators. That's it. You could enter more. You can just copy that irrigator and add more, or you can delete them. Now I come down to my paddock. Now the paddock is asking you your soils, information about your soils and what proportion of your farm is irrigated by the different irrigators. Okay, so what's the initial water in your soil profile? So this is just a sliding rule. So is it 100% or is it 0%? So the initial water when you go to sow your crop, you might not know, but you might have to make a guess. In a moderate season it might be 50%, wet season it might be saturated, dry season it might be very dry. So it's just a sliding rule. What these do is these say what proportion of the farm comes from different irrigators. Now if you had you might have a really wet season, you can say, well, I can get more out of the channel because water is more abundant. So to do that, you just click the mouse in there and it will change the proportion. Or you can click in there and it will increase the other proportion. So we might say in a really dry season, I'm going to water with a sprinkler because I'm going to be much more strict with my water. Now this is plant available water capacity. You might know what that is, or you might not know what plant available water capacity is. That's basically the amount of water that's available to the plant. Now this here, it says paddock area, but I often think of that as the whole farm area. Okay, so what area do you want to look at? So it's not necessarily have to replicate your farm exactly. Really what we want to do is just put in your whole farm area, and the Optimiser will come up with a number of different areas to use. Okay, so you could add multiple paddocks and put another one in here and go into the details, but complexity in means complexity out. So the more complicated that you put in, the more detailed we put it comes out. So I'm just going to keep it simple in this example. Now I might not know what my plant available water capacity is. So here's another little item that we've ingested from the web. So you click check from the web, it's checking from a website, and it's saying for Horsham, where we clicked at the start, I've got a clay soil and I've got 138 mil. My root depth average is 1.2 metres. And you might say, well, on average, probably a bit less than that, so I'm going to take that down a bit to about a metre, 1,000 millimetres. Click OK, or you could just change it there. Then we move down into crops. Same deal as the water price app, which I showed in a previous webinar. You can put in as many crop types as you like, or you could just put in one, and you can copy them by hitting this or delete by hitting this. And you have, for any given crop, you can put your mouse over and just roll it up and down and it will change the yield. So you put in your likely yield, your low yield and your high yield. In our work with farmers, we've found that most people know what a typical irrigated yield is for a given crop on their farm. If you don't know, you can use one of these other examples. If you do know, I encourage you to use your own numbers. So down the bottom we have sale prices in dollars per tonne. You can simply type that in, or you can hit these spinners at the side. We have a variable cost. Okay, so this is the cost of producing the crop not including irrigation in dollars per hectare. You have a minimum and maximum water applied, so the minimum corresponds to the low, the maximum corresponds to the high. Important to tell it whether it's a summer crop or a winter crop. Summer crop being, for example, rice or maize, winter crop being wheat, canola, barley and so on. And then you might say, well, I've actually also got irrigated barley or irrigated canola, just to be different. So irrigated canola, it's not a rain-fed crop. It's quite expensive. It's $1,700 a hectare to produce on average. My water applied is much less though. I only apply 3 and maximum probably 4.5. My yields, well, they're not that high. So my lowest yields for irrigated canola are probably 5, probably 6, and then probably, well, maybe we'll make that one a bit less, probably 6.5 or 6. So this is, I'm just making these numbers up, but you set these numbers in accordance with your own farm. And then we've got all the different crops, and if you look on them, you'll see the different numbers. So make sure you don't just use an example without checking the numbers first. So then we come down to the Optimiser. So that's it. That's all you do. You can optimise in terms of dollars per hectare or dollars per megalitre. So and looking at the climatic outlook for where you are, you might know that it's going to be a dry next couple of months. You might know that it's going to be wet, or you might not know at all. So you might say, okay, I'm expecting a moderate season. Now, in terms of dollars per hectare, what's the most profitable combination of crops for my farm? This is what this will do in terms of dollars per hectare. It'll give us a table of all the information that we put in and the optimised profitable output. So we have the crop types up the top, and then the prices, yields, gross margins, and if you scroll down, you see the total profitability. So by looking at the bottom should give you a pretty good indication of which crops to sow and which not. But I often find that this second last column is the most informative. The area in hectares, what it's saying, and it's actually the number in brackets. So it's saying your most profitable combination in this, for the numbers that we put in, you'll get a different number if you change the numbers, is 20% for irrigated maize and 100% of your area in winter is rain-fed wheat. So these green ones, so this one here is actually a summer crop. So it's saying in summer, put in 20% of your area as irrigated maize and 100% of your water on that. So what the Optimiser is saying, you're most profitable in terms of dollars per hectare, that's why this row is red, for using irrigated maize. In winter, because of the water price and the yields that you get, you're much better off just having rain-fed wheat. You're much better off trading your water or saving your water for the summer crop. Then you might come back and say, well, what happens if I had a dry season? Okay. So if we go back here, we hit dry, we hit optimal areas again, we go and repeat the scenario and just see what happens. So it's loading. It takes a bit longer because it's doing thousands and thousands of combinations underneath the hood. It's saying you can only really afford to put in 11% of your farm area as maize. Okay, so and that's using 100% of the water in a dry season. So with your expected yield is 11 tonne. Not profitable to put in canola, so it's not suggesting you do that at all. Again, most profitable for wheat. Then you might say, well, how do the results change if I look at it in terms of dollars per megalitre? And when water prices are high and when your land area is unlimited, you're much better off looking at dollars per megalitre. So you get a different outcome. So what it's saying is, in terms of dollars per megalitre, these are all zero because we haven't applied any water to these, and it's saying only sow 11% of your area as maize. If that was a really wet season and we hit optimal water, the question is how the results would change. So we go back, we hit rerun again, so a lot of it is just playing with alternative scenarios. You can see the outcome is much, much different, and that's probably because the water price is less, your yields are now higher. It's saying so 98% of your farm in winter, well pretty much 100% to wheat, to irrigated wheat, only 7%, which is pretty negligible, to irrigated maize in the summer. So if you only wanted to do summer crops, you could just have irrigated maize. Well, you could just have two irrigated summer crops. So it will optimise according to all of the crops that you put in, and it shows the total water use here. So we're nearly done. I just wanted to say quickly what this water price optimizer is. It's the same thing, but it shows the distribution of optimal returns for a number of different water prices. So this is asking you what's the maximum water price you want to go up to. The longer you extend that, the longer it takes. So I'll just go out to, you grab it and you pull it out. I'll go out to 500. That's probably going to take a while. We'll go 400. Season expectation is wet. Select your irrigation source. Yep, channel. Right, go. So this is probably going to take some time to do. I could be wrong, but what it will show us is bar charts of how the area of your farm should change to the different crops that you sowed as water price increases. So it's gone out to $450 a megalitre, or 400, that's what we put in there. What it's saying is, it takes a little while to appear, the area of your farm is always the same under those conditions that I put in. So it's saying you're always better off with 100% irrigated wheat and 26% of your farm, or about a quarter of your farm, as maize. And that's all the way up to a water price of 400. That combination is still the same. So you can play with different water prices, different irrigation sources. You know, we could have a go at irrigated lateral, hit go, and see what happens. Sometimes it can be insensitive to the irrigation source. That means that your prices or your inputs are similar. If you expect a difference, maybe go back and check your output. So here we've got the same answer. So the percentage versus the water price. So I'll stop there, but thanks very much for watching this webinar, and see you next time.